Many of you know that defense wins championships in fantasy football, and you definitely need the best defense possible in fantasy football to give your squad that complete edge on a weekly basis. So we're going to go through the top 12 defense rankings for 2025 fantasy football today. So just make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So getting into the first defense right here, I would say that the Texans defense is still my favorite. And they've really been at number one all offseason for the most part. The thing with the Texans defense that I think is so important to keep in mind is that this is a defensive head coach with DeMeco Ryans, former linebacker. This guy has been an elite defensive coordinator / play caller at the head coach position since he entered the league. And he's got so much talent on this defense that's very young, by the way. Derek Stingley on the back end. They've got a great front seven. This is a defense that is young, they're aggressive, and they're led by somebody like a DeMeco Ryans, who is an absolutely elite head coach. And I think that also it's really important that this defense is returning so many starters. The continuity on this defense alone, and with the evolution of a player like Will Anderson, for example, will bring that sack number up from 49 last year to probably closer to 60, I would bet. And they're going to be continuing to be aggressive when it comes to making plays on the ball. With 19 interceptions last year and 9 fumble recoveries, I expect to see similar, if not better, numbers. Now, the only concern that I would bring to the table is that their schedule is definitely mixed. They have some tough matchups because they're consistent division winners, but at the same time, it's so doable for an elite squad like the Texans, and their division is cake. I'm sorry, Titans fans, but the Texans will give them a beatdown in at least one of those games. The Colts, they will beat down. The Jags might be the toughest, but I would still hedge my bet against the Texans winning those games. You're basically getting 6 good matchups for this elite defense right here. I'll take the Texans at number 1. And I got the Broncos at number 2 in the same tier right here because I also see an elite result for them as well. Now, the Broncos defense last year was actually the number 1 defense. 10.5 fantasy points per game. Just to put that in perspective, you're getting more from the Broncos defense on a per game perspective last year than a lot of wide receiver 2s and 3s, running back 2s and 3s, tight ends. This was a great defense to give you an edge on your weekly matchups. And the Broncos, 63 sacks last year, that led the league. And the reason why it's going to be really good again is because they've got all of their squad basically back, and they've got another year with Vance Joseph as the defensive coordinator. There's really not much changing except some additions to this defense, as in Talanoa Ufunga at the safety position, who is an elite talent when he's actually playing, and Dre Greenlaw at the linebacker position, both of them coming from San Francisco. Then you add in their draft pick at corner, Barron, from the University of Texas. This could be a great defense all over again. And their schedule, I would say, is a little bit mixed. You can see that on the screen right now. They've definitely got some tougher matchups because they overperformed last year. But I still think that, again, they fall into the same category with the Texans, where I think talent rules the day with both of these defenses in tier 1. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I will say that there was some big changes that were made from the last defensive rankings. I actually moved the Rams defense up to number 3. Now, full transparency, I'm big on NFC West defenses for many reasons that we will go through. To start out with the Rams, they have a pretty doable schedule. And I think another thing that's really noteworthy is that these NFC West games, a lot of times over the last several years, they've been lower scoring affairs. Now, why is that? It's probably because they all have really good defenses in that division, and division games are always wacky. So the Rams offense, if Matt Stafford can stay healthy, they will keep the defense fresh the entire year, and they've got some major breakout players, namely Jared Verse in the waiting. It's a young, aggressive defense that was able to force turnovers last year, especially down the stretch, to give them a shot against teams like the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think that this defense takes a big step up. I think their division is good for defenses in fantasy, and I do see the Rams at number 3. But I've got the Cardinals at number 4 because I also see a very easy schedule. Like, you can look at the beginning of the season for the Cardinals, and basically it's pretty much mostly cake. The Cardinals defense also went full defense in the NFL draft. They did not draft a single offensive player, basically the whole draft. So they're committed to the defense and growing with that squad. And I think that when you look at the head coach and the way that they played last year, I think it's no wonder why they had a lot of mixed results because of the talent that they didn't have. But they're getting that talent this year at the front seven, at the back four. They're going to be a good defense that gets more than 8 fumble recoveries this year. And again, that division is set up for good defenses because they all have one, meaning that all of their division games are going to be low scoring, probably turnover affairs. So I think the Cardinals had to move above the Ravens, who I really like as well. Now, in full transparency, the only reason the Ravens and the Vikings moved down this rankings is because they both have very, very hard schedules. I mean, just think about it logically. Like, without even looking at the screen right now, this is a division winner in the AFC, and they play the Bengals already on top of that twice a year as well. And we know that the Bengals always give them a very hard time. So the Ravens defense, those are 2 games right there where they won't be any good to start. But the Ravens defense also, the thing that I love about them is that they're very similar to the Texans and to the Denver Broncos, where they're a very young defense led by a lot of young studs, and they're all coming back. So there's continuity within that defensive squad. And I think that when you look at the 2 halves of last year with Zach Orr as that defensive coordinator, they were vastly different, but they ended up being really good in that back half the moment that they started playing Kyle Hamilton at deep safety. Now, the beauty of this year is that they drafted Starks in the first round at the safety position to take over that back half of the defense. So Kyle Hamilton gets to basically be their essentially pseudo Troy Polamalu. So I think that this is a defense that's going to force a lot of turnovers, be really aggressive, but I think they will be boom or bust because of that tough schedule. Now with the Vikings, I see a very similar thing, except the Vikings have something against them right now, which is that they lost a bunch of key pieces on that defense. They just couldn't afford to keep everybody because they were so elite last year with Brian Flores as defensive coordinator. They were the number 2 defense in fantasy last year. 9.5 fantasy points per game, 49 sacks, 24 freaking interceptions. Well, I have a news flash for you. They lost guys up front to not help that defensive backfield, and they also lost some key pieces in the defensive backfield. So they will be at a disadvantage this year, given their schedule will be tougher, which it is, and the fact that they lost some key personnel. But at the end of the day, they have Brian Flores at defensive coordinator, which will definitely make them a viable defense. But let's be honest for a second, guys. We all know that playing the waiver wire with defenses and kickers is where you really win. And we have developed something all offseason, and it's been a long time in the making, to automate the waiver wire process for you. So you never have to wake up at 3 a.m. disheveled, not knowing what's going on, trying to get a priority claim without claiming that player. We have automated that process for you so you can sleep through the night and not have to worry about making those big decisions at 3 in the freaking morning. This is game changing. It has never been brought to the fantasy space. And it's not just football. You can hook your fantasy basketball leagues up, baseball leagues, hockey leagues, whatever sport you play in fantasy, your process on the waivers is automated through FS Roundup. I cannot wait to bring this to you because it has never been brought to the fantasy space before. But right now, just go to fsroundup.com. Just take a look at the website. It's really hyped. And we will be dropping the official waiver wire tool in late August, early September. I can't wait to bring it to you guys because, like I said, it's never been brought, so you have no idea the value you're about to get from this site right here. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I've got the Seahawks defense and the Patriots defense number 8. Now, with the Seahawks defense, they actually do have more of a mixed schedule than I would say the Cardinals do, who I think have a very, very easy schedule. But again, this defense has so many things on their side. Young and aggressive defense with mostly young players on rookie deals, by the way. I mean, you've got Witherspoon at the back end. You've got DeMarcus Lawrence there in the front that they added this year, who I think was a little bit of an overrated signing. But I think since he doesn't have to be the star on that defensive line particularly, I think that he will have a lot of good moments in 2025. And I think that when you add on Mike McDonald as that head coach, who is a genius defensively, it's going to even out that schedule and make some of those tougher games actually pretty doable in defensive fantasy football. And I think that also when you add on that NFC West, where they're all going to be in pretty low scoring matchups when they face each other, it will make them viable, just like the other defenses in the NFC West. So I'm going to bank on the talent that they do have because it's pretty steep. And the Patriots defense, they continue to move up my list right now because at the beginning of the offseason, right, we don't know what these teams actually look like and what their offenses look like. At this time of the year, we have a much better idea. So schedule factors in a lot more today than it did in June when I first did these rankings. The Patriots defense have an outrageously good schedule. I mean, just look at the first 11 games alone. They've got the Las Vegas Raiders at home, the Miami Dolphins, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Carolina Panthers. So just in the month of September alone, I mean, we're looking at not one top 10 offense in there. Miami is not going to be good. The Pittsburgh Steelers will not be good. The Raiders need some time. And I think the Carolina Panthers, they'll probably catch them at a good point in the season where they won't be as good as they would be in October or November. The Buffalo Bills is tough, but then they get the New Orleans Saints and the Tennessee Titans and the Cleveland Browns in 3 straight games in October. That is elite. And then you take out Atlanta and Tampa Bay, who could be tough, definitely Tampa. Then you get the New York Jets. You've got great personnel like Christian Gonzalez on the back end. This is a really good squad who also just added Milton Williams to that defensive line from the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't see a world where they're not a top 12, top 10 defense in 2025. And again, when you factor in that schedule, it makes it that much more obvious to me at least. Now, I've got the Eagles at 9, and they keep moving down because of the fact that the Patriots moved up. And I'm sorry, guys, but there is a difference between a great NFL defense, which the Eagles have, and a really good / great fantasy defense. The Eagles last year, as good as they were defensively in the NFL, well, in fantasy football, they were the defense number 7 at 7.9 fantasy points per game. 41 sacks, 13 interceptions, 18 forced fumbles. They did not lead in any category that counts in fantasy like those above. So the Philadelphia Eagles do not perform as well in fantasy as they do in the NFL. I know that's really hard for Eagles fans to grasp, but it's true. And they have a much more brutal schedule this year than they did last year. And there's a big difference between being a hunter versus being the hunted. They are the hunted team this year. And I'm not saying that they weren't already viewed as a tough game in last year's schedule, but this is the Super Bowl champions right here. So they will be everybody's hunted game in 2025. I do see more pullback from the Eagles because they have lost some key pieces, but at the end of the day, that's the benefit of drafting so well. They're able to fill all those holes that they did lose because they draft so well. So the Eagles will still be top 10. I just don't see top 5 or top 6 finishes for the Eagles defense. Dropping down to our last tier right here. I've got the 49ers at number 10. Now, with the 49ers, there's several things that I think will make this defense better. Number one, it will not be the loss of personnel because they did lose good personnel. Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Ufunga both went to the Denver Broncos. That is a loss. But the thing that makes me really like this defense is because they have Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh is a really good defensive coordinator, and Nick Bosa actually just recently said this. He said we missed that alpha presence in our defensive meetings last year because they didn't have it with Nick Sorensen last year. So I think that this defense is just going to be more motivated to move up back where they once were before Nick Sorensen and Steve Wilkes. With Robert Saleh back, I expect to see this defense play much better in fantasy football because they still do have talent. Guys like Nick Bosa. They've got Fred Warner still. So they do still have talent. I think they've got enough talent, and their schedule is sort of easy because they were last in the division last year. I expect the 49ers to play good football. Now, I've got the Bears at 11, and I think the Bears, the reason that they dropped, they were at 10 last time. They had to drop because their schedule is really, really tough. I mean, the reason I like the Bears is because their defensive roster is fantastic. It's actually a tremendous defensive roster. They made a lot of plays last year, and basically up until the Tyreek Stevenson disaster against the Washington Commanders, they were a top 5, top 3 defense in fantasy. They were after everybody. But the moment they started playing tougher teams, they did fold a little bit, and they just kind of collapsed as a team. I expect them to be much more mentally tough with Ben Johnson there. So I do think that the Bears defense will be good. But again, this schedule is brutal. Like, this is a team that is going to be playing some really brutal games. Now, week 1 in particular, I would actually give the edge to the Bears because they're playing the Minnesota Vikings in primetime at home. I think edge Bears there against a rookie, basically quarterback with J.J. McCarthy. But outside of that, there's a lot of tough matchups here, obviously being in division and out of the division. So the Bears, I can see issues with this one, but they have so much talent defensively, they can't not be in the top 12. And then the Bills defense to round us out. Look, you can say whatever you want about the Bills defense. I get it. If you look at the Bills defense over the last basically 6 years with Josh Allen as their starting quarterback, they have been a top 12 to top 10 defense in fantasy football. Like, this is what the Bills do. Because you know what? Sean McDermott is a good defensive mind at the head coaching position. Regardless of what personnel they have, they will be a top 12 defense because history proves that one. So the Bills defense, even though they have some tough games on that schedule, like they do every year, they're always a top 12 defense because they are well coached and they're aggressive. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below. And if you want to see the top 69 rankings for 2025 fantasy football, click on this video right here.